The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple, and yet everybody rushes around in a great panic, as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. A king on the outside, a sage on the inside. That is how Alan Watts, the most popular figure when it comes to Zen Buddhism in the West, explains the doctrine of Zen. Many people think that Buddhism is all about asceticism, denying yourself pleasure, and not concerning yourself with worldly things. However, the most recognizable trait of Alan Watts as a Zen philosopher is treating life as an entertaining game. He famously said, "Man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun." You may say, well, life is not really a game. When we feel pain, our pain is real. When we lose someone, that person is gone permanently. When we fail, our failure is real as well. All of those statements are true. Zen is not the philosophy of negating our experiences. When Zen scholars and philosophers say that life is a game, what they truly want us to do is not treat life too seriously. Hence, the king on the outside and the sage on the inside. The psychology of the king is that of someone who wants to achieve great power and success in this world. The king symbolizes our earthly wishes and the fact that we all want to make our lives as good as possible. The king is highly driven to achieve his goals. To want to be like the king is a healthy and necessary part of being human. However, the sage on the inside has a different worldview. He has the awareness that no matter how much the king achieves, all of it will end one day. Even if we don't reach our goals, even if our lives don't go as planned, we have the necessary wisdom to understand that it doesn't make us any less of a human being. The sage is the one who can put things in perspective, and, most importantly, he has the insight that stops us from losing ourselves in this world. Both the king side of ourselves and the sage side of ourselves are necessary elements of the psyche of a healthy human being. If we have only the mindset of a king, we will grow too attached to things like money and status. On the other hand, if we only have the mindset of a sage, we will ignore our natural human needs like food and shelter. After all, man cannot survive on wisdom alone. The art of living is neither careless drifting on the one hand, nor fearful clinging on the other. It consists in being sensitive to each moment, in regarding it as utterly new and unique, and having the mind open and wholly receptive." End quote. Another thing Alan Watts loves to talk about is the conception of time. He points to the fact that out of the three, past, present and future, only the present truly exists. The past and the future are only ideas in our minds. Nobody has ever actually experienced the past or the future. Every time we experience anything, it is all in the present. I have realized that the past and the future are real illusions, that they exist only in the present, which is all that there is. From one point of view, the present is shorter than a microsecond. From another, it embraces all eternity. End quote. That realization has the potential to completely change our outlook on life. In one of his talks, Alan Watts explains how society conditions us to live only for the future. We go to middle school with the thought of going to high school. We work hard for our grades in high school so that we can go to a good college. When we are in college, we work hard so that we can get a good job. When we get a job, we feel like we need to work even harder so that we can get an even better job. But one day we wake up and realize that nothing has changed. No matter how quickly we climb the ladder, no matter what heights we reach, we still feel the same way. Psychologically speaking, we may feel that we have been lied to and robbed of something that has been promised to us. We ask ourselves, what was all of it for? What is the thing that I've been chasing this whole time? And why can I never reach it? Alan Watts gives us the answer to that question. You are always living for somewhere where you aren't. And while, as I said, it is of tremendous use for us to be able to look ahead in this way and to plan, there is no use planning for a future, which when you get to it and it becomes the present, you won't be there. you will be living in some other future, which hasn't yet arrived. And so, in this way, one is never actually able to inherit and enjoy the fruits of one's action. You can't live at all unless you can live fully now." End quote. Truly living in the present is one of the most difficult things one can do. The present seems to never satisfy us. We would rather live inside of a dream in our heads than be in the present moment, the vision of a beautiful life in the future, even if it never comes true, helps us deal with the difficulties of the present moment. However, Zen teaches us to deal with these difficulties head-on. Although it is a painful practice, it is the only way for us to be truly fulfilled. Taking the suffering minute by minute, second by second, is by far the best way of handling it, because every time we distract ourselves from the pain we experience, it is sure to come back to us even stronger. Instead, we should listen to the pain. There is always a reason behind it. There is always something that the pain is trying to tell us. Also, we need to learn to perceive suffering as a temporary experience. To better understand it, let's hear a short Zen story. It is terribly hot, and how shall we escape the heat? And he answered, "Go right down into the bottom of the furnace." "But in the furnace," said the student, "how do we escape the scorching fire?" And the master's final word was, "No further pains will harass you." At first, the master's answer doesn't seem to make any sense. But let's put it another way. Let's say that you have 1,000 steps to climb. You may look at them and say that it's going to be a struggle. Or you may simply take a step, then another step, and then another. In a sense, we never actually climb 1,000 steps. If we can be fully in the present, we can see that every time we only climb one step. All of a sudden, we don't need to worry about our future suffering. All that we need to do is take in whatever we feel in the present, which is only one step, and not 1,000 of them. Perceiving the world in this way is incredibly helpful, but also incredibly difficult. Alan Watts said, "What that requires is that we shut up." That is to say, that we become interiorly silent and cease from the interminable chatter that goes on inside our skulls. Because you see, most of us think compulsively all the time. End quote. Usually, we aren't aware of it, but in a sense, we are all addicted to thinking. In his book, titled Shift into Freedom, psychologist and author Locke Kelly writes, "The habit of continually looking to thoughts for satisfaction, even positive thoughts, creates a kind of addiction." End quote. We think constantly because it's what our brains are made for. If we never learn to control them, we will never be able to truly be in the present moment, which is the only time that existence actually happens. In order to be in the present, and thus finally enjoy life and deal with its everyday difficulties, we need to learn how to exist without thoughts. It is a really tricky thing to attempt. If we are told, "Don't think about a white elephant," the first thing that appears in our minds is the picture of a white elephant. Similarly, if we tell ourselves, "Stop thinking," the thinking is never going to stop. In Zen, the best way of learning how to be without thoughts is the exercise of meditation. Meditation in which we are not trying to push our thoughts and feelings away, but in which we simply listen to them and observe them. If we simply notice our thoughts, we realize that we are not our thoughts. Instead, we are simply observers of whatever is going on in our minds. This insight lets us tell the difference between what's going on in our brains and what's going on in reality. For example, in our brains we may think, "What's the point of living?" But in reality, no point at all is necessary. In his famous quote, Alan Watts tells us, "Meditation is the discovery that the point of life is always arrived at in the immediate moment. Meditation brings us into a state of peace where we can understand that the point of life, the place where it's at, is simply here and now." End quote. The point of Zen is achieving the state of Satori. Simply put, it is the state of just being. It is both the easiest and the most difficult thing to do. Easy because we already have it, difficult because we constantly keep searching for something more. When we hear that the answer is in the here and now, and that we already are where we need to be, we are somewhat disappointed. We say, this is it? There is no way. There has to be something out there, something better, something greater. Most religions and philosophies give us promises of a new, beautiful world, in which all of our struggles will be done away with. But in this regard, Zen gives us the most boring, plain and harsh answer. A student asks, we have to go to work and struggle every day. How do we get out of this? The master responds, we wake up and go to work. There is nothing extraordinary about Zen. There are no secrets, there are no tricks. As Alan Watts said, so the position of the Zen master is, I have nothing to tell you. We're not offering you any panacea, any solution, any doctrine, any big goodie to the problem of life, because the problem is an illusion. End quote. The point here is that we treat existence as a problem that should be solved. Zen teaches that the solution to the problem of existence is simply to exist. In one of his lectures, Alan Watts told the story of an American Zen student who was given 1 year to study Zen. After 11 months, he started panicking because he wasn't getting any closer to the truth of the teaching. He started getting more and more desperate, meditating all day and all night. However, on the last day, he suddenly saw that there is nothing to see. He saw that he was already enlightened, because he already existed. He realized that there is nothing to realize. Alan Watts summed up the story with this statement: when I can no longer fool you that you can get something out of life, you'll know that you're alive, because you don't get something out of it. You are it.